Anthony Giddens, one of the architects of the third way. How do you think Gordon Brown's going to shape up?
Well, I mean, third way actually is just a label for how you update left of centre thinking in light of the big changes going on in the world, especially living in a more globally interdependent world. That is also Gordon Brown's framework for thinking. I think he's made a pretty auspicious beginning, as everyone can see. He's going to sustain, as it were, a third way position, because he's not going to be a traditional leftist, as you can see. You know, he emphasises sovereignty, for example, emphasises the need to deal with crime, manage migration, as well as the traditional Labour issues of getting a more egalitarian society. So he's going to carry on a lot of the inheritance, but giving its own stamp to it.
How does the third way differ from old-fashioned compromise, which we've always had in British politics pre-Thatcher?
Well, the third way for me is nothing to do with compromise whatsoever. It's nothing to do with being in the middle. It's to do with being in front. It's to do with innovation. It's to do with recognising that, look, we live in a world of massive change. If you take, for example, the economy, 30 years ago, about 45% of people in Britain, they worked in manufacture and they worked in agriculture. Now you've only got about 14% working the two combined. So that's a massive transformation of the society and the class structure. The old policies won't work with those sorts of things. So for me, the third way is a label for being prepared to change your policy in relation to a radically changing world. That's what it's all about.
Do you think that over the last 10 years, while Blair's been in number 10, he's obviously pursued what you've described as a third way? Do you think that the party's always come with him, or are they looking for something else now? Are they looking to get their party back and go to the old values?
Well, I mean, the third way for me is much wider than the Labour Party or Clinton's Democrats. It's a generic thing for all left-of-centre parties across the world. Only left-of-centre parties that have been prepared to innovate and change and adapt have been successful. So that's what it's all about, I think. And, I think for the future, we do need, I feel, to get back to a more social democratic style of thinking. I think that's important. But I think it's avant-garde social democracy. So we were having a debate here tonight about child poverty. Well, which countries have done best on that? It's the Scandinavian countries. It's not because they spend a lot more on taxation primarily. It's because they've been the most revisionist countries. They've been prepared to change their policies most. For example, they introduced pension reforms earlier than most other countries. A lot of the money they save through pension reforms, they've spent on children. Well, it's what we should be doing.
In terms of policy innovation, I mean, over the last 10 years, which 1, 2, 3 policies would you pick out as being the most innovative, either in America or here?
Well, labour market reform. No country which hasn't reformed its labour markets has been successful, and the New Deal has worked pretty well. We've got a minimum wage in the UK. We've got 75% proportion of the labour force in work. It's possibly the highest of all the industrial countries at the moment. So that's a pretty tremendous change and success for Labour, I think. You've actually got a lot of constitutional change, which Labour's carried on, I think. Still unfinished, as we know, but very, very important. You've had devolution and so forth. And I think Labour has actually done a good job in terms of international support for Kyoto and climate change, at least towards the end of Blair's period of government. And there are plenty of other areas where you still need, I think, new thinking. You need quite a lot of further radical innovation.
In terms of what's on the horizon now, either for Brown in the UK or for the Democrats if they take the White House, what are the policy innovations that need to happen?
Well, I think climate change, I think climate change is now accepted by almost every competent scientist as advanced more quickly than we thought. It's going to demand changes in lifestyle. I think we should be building a social democratic framework around response to climate change rather than adding it on as a kind of extra thing. Therefore, we have to look at the financial structure, fiscal structure, tax structure, make sure green taxes are in place, make sure the right kind of incentives are in place, even put that ahead of social justice, because it is perhaps the key question of politics. And I think the Democrats, assuming they get back to power in the US, will certainly move the environment right up the agenda there too.
Do you not think that both countries are facing a big potential social issue with the amount of immigration that's coming in? The blue-collar vote especially are starting to resent the amount of immigrant labour we've got.
Well, immigration, is a mixed picture. I think most people accept that immigration as a whole brings benefits to a country. As you get older, who's going to pay your pension if it's not migrants coming into the country, because we have such a low birth rate? We've got a big imbalance between young people and older people. Diversity, as we know, stimulates innovation. Immigrants actually pay more taxes, recent immigrants, proportionately than native population. It's not true that don't pay taxes, but you must manage migration, and especially you must manage illegal migration, because all sorts of problems for the welfare system, healthcare system, people's worries about getting something for nothing, very much bound up with illegal migration, and so that's where our efforts should concentrate, I think.